Hello, I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com on New Year's Eve. And with us, the appropriate guest, Gerald Celente. He is the publisher of the Trends Journal. That's trendsjournal.com. Gerald Celente, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Oh, it's always great being on with you, Greg. And a Happy New Year to you and everyone.
You too. I hope 2013 is going to be a better year than 2012, but I don't think so. And I really want to go heavily on the economic predictions, and you have to be either going crazy or getting lots of material to write about with this fiscal cliff fake fighting deal. What are your financial predictions for the country coming up here in 2013? What are the trends that you're spotting?
You know, it's becoming more and more difficult to make economic forecasts, and there's a reason why. Because they keep coming up with these schemes undreamed of. Go back to Bush. All of a sudden they made up a thing called too big to fail. I mean, that was the death of capitalism. And then you go back to this year. We found out about the LIBOR scandal. Oh, you remember that one? Where the world banks were rigging the interest rates. So the point that I'm making, Greg, is you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. How about ongoing monetary transactions? Oh, in case you don't know what that is, we'll call it OMT. That's what they're doing over there in Europe with the European Central Bank, of course run by Mario Draghi, former vice chairman of the Goldman Sachs gang. And then you keep coming back to the States. There was QE1, QE2, QE3, and now QE for every day. They keep making up new stuff. What is it that the Fed is in debt now? They're going to be about $3 trillion worth of mortgage-backed securities and treasuries that they're buying up. So, as you had pointed out in our previous conversations, you want to talk about solving the fiscal cliff. You know, that could be one of the ways of doing it. And, of course, how could anybody look toward either whether it's that guy Reid or McConnell or Obama or Bonner or Laurel or Hardy or Abbott and Costello to try to fix this? Because that's what all these guys are. They're comics. They say that politics is show business for ugly people. And that's all this is one big show. So where is the economy going in 2013? Our best estimate, and this is one of the years we're really unsure because, again, they keep coming up with these schemes. A year ago, by the way, in Europe, they announced that they were going to loan the banks all the money that they needed for virtually nothing. And don't worry about it. Pay us back in a couple of years. We'll let you know when we need the dough. And then again, in China, now the Bank of Japan, the new Prime Minister Abe announced he wants the Bank of Japan to also start printing money. So the scheme continues to go. And the scheme being dumping cheap money into the system to perpetuate an economy that should have crashed in 2008. So for 2013, our best shot is more of the same, but worse.
More of the same, but worse.
Yes.
Wow. That's going to be the title of this article, I believe. When you're talking about this whole fiscal cliff thing, and people are now starting to wake up, are you sensing that people are starting to say, oh, you mean it's time to pay the piper? I mean, things are starting to... How do A, are people waking up, in your estimation, starting to? And B, how can families protect themselves, and should they be protecting themselves from what our leaders are doing or not doing?
Well, let's take the last part of what you said, what our leaders are doing. These guys couldn't lead me across the street. I mean, my God, again, look at them. Look at McConnell and Reid. Look at Obama and Bonner. I mean, Obama should be selling used cars someplace. And Obama, I mean, you know, he's just the BSer in chief. And these other two guys, my God, you know, they're has-beens and wash-ups. So they're not leaders. Are people wising up? The people who are listening to your show are wising up. The people that subscribe to the Trends Journal are wising up. But for the masses, no. They want to believe in their lies. I have a line, by the way, I use. Conservatives believe, liberals lie. Now, I'm not talking about true conservatives or true liberals. I'm talking about the people who call themselves that. For example, you get some guy who calls himself a conservative and says, we got to attack every foreign country out there. We got to kill them Muslims before they kill us. They actually believe that nonsense. They really, really do. And then the liberals, they lie, you see. They don't believe, they know better, but they lie. So, for example, you talk about how we could solve the fiscal cliff. I got an idea. Why don't we bring all the troops back home? Why don't we cut the defense budget back to the way, say, the founding fathers would have liked to have it when they didn't want us to get involved in foreign entanglements? And you talk to them and you say, you know, Obama, they just moved the war, the drone war, from Pakistan to Yemen. Oh, and by the way, you know, they're going into Syria, and look what he did in Libya. And then they'll say, why do you think he did it? I mean, why do I think he did it? Why do I think the kid that blew away all those people in Connecticut did it? What difference does it make the why? It's the is. So they won't believe in they still have their belief systems, and they lie because they want to believe in them. So as we're moving forward, most people are afraid to look in the mirror and see who they are, what they've become, and how they believe in their leaders.
How can they protect themselves?
I can't give financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not permitted. I'm only speaking for myself.
In broad terms.
In my speaking for myself, I continue to buy gold and silver. Even though prices are depressed, it's moronic that they're depressed, particularly when you hear again, Abe, the new prime minister of Japan, saying a, quote, a currency war has broken out. 3 weeks earlier, the departing chief of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, in New York. A currency war has broken out. Guido Montego over there in Brazil. There's a currency war going on. All of these nations are devaluing their currency, China included, so that they could flood money into the banking system, give them all the cheap money they need to keep this thing going, and to help exporters export their crap and be in a competitive position because the currency's weaker. So what does all this mean? It means debasing the currency. The more you print, the cheaper it gets, particularly as production goes down and consumption goes up. You're buying more than you're making. So gold and silver prices should go up. And people say, why aren't they going up? As I mentioned earlier, hey, remember that thing called LIBOR? Nobody's talking about it anymore. They rigged the interest rate game. You see, all of these fines that banks are paying, no heads ever roll, because the white shoe boys can't get their hands dirty or feet taken off those red carpets and put into jail. Look what they've done. They've been rigging the game. They rigged the LIBOR game. They rigged the entire derivatives market. They suckered people into buying worthless securities. You think they're rigging the gold and silver markets? Because when you look at how much is being traded on each of them globally, guess what? The central banks, in collusion with their other bankster buddies, they could rig the game very easily. But for me, I'm in it long term. Number two, again, they're dumping all this cheap dough into the system. I just got a mortgage, commercial mortgage. I'm buying properties in uptown Kingston, but not any property. I bought the 1750s Franz Rogan house. I bought the 1774 Kingston Academy. And I'm in the process of buying another stone building that predates the Revolution. I'm buying them to keep them and bring them up to a better level and leave them to future generations, and to also use them as I want to be a part of the Second American Revolution. This one, of course, of mind and spirit, not bullets and armies. I'm saying this, Greg, because you could borrow very cheaply. And for me, again, speaking only for myself, investing in properties that I think values are going to increase, but I'm paying them off with deflated dollars. So devalued dollars, because I believe there's going to be a great devaluation coming. And that great devaluation, when it hits, I'll be paying off, as I said, 3.25% locked in for 10 years and then adjustable after that. After 10 years, I'll be paying this thing off with monopoly money. So for me, those are kind of good investments to make.
Okay, finally, I mean, the news in the Middle East, I mean, the big points. Hamas and Israel only have a ceasefire in Gaza on the Israel southern border. On the northern border, you have Syria in a Hatfield and McCoy Shia versus Sunni Muslim knockdown, drag-out fight. And this week, the Iranian Navy is conducting naval exercises, war games from the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz, in which 40% of all seaborne oil is shipped, and all the way out to the northern Indian Ocean. It's a big area. And, the U.S. and France and Italy and other, Western countries have major naval assets over there. So does it look to you like anything's settling down in the Middle East, or is there a fuse lit and we just can't hear the...
You can hear it. It's very loud, but they're not playing it very well. For example, you mentioned Israel first. Just within the last 2 weeks, they announced the building of over 5,000 more, as they call them, settlement units.
I saw that.
They're not settlements. They're housing developments. They're real estate deals. So they're stealing more Palestinian land. They say it's theirs. The world says it isn't. Of course, they're in violation of a number of international laws and conventions. So that's one hot spot. You mentioned what's going on in Syria with the Sunni Shia and Alawite insurrection, and all of the money and arms flowing in from the U.S., from NATO, from the Arab Little League into that area. So it's becoming more volatile. The war that the United States, NATO launched against Libya, as they call it, a humanitarian mission. There's a civil war going on over there, and what has happened, it's now spread into Mali and other areas of North Africa and spreading south. And then you go over to Yemen. Oh, this is good news. Again, where the liberals lie, as I said, more drone strikes going into Yemen, which is in the grips of a terrible civil war. And then, of course, there's Bahrain. Let's not talk about Bahrain because, hey, that's where the Fifth Fleet is. You can't say anything bad about them. They're good guys. Well, there's a civil war going on there, a Sunni Shia civil war as well. And then you move over to Egypt. Ah, wonderful, wonderful. The Muslim Brotherhood is now in control. Only 16% of the people voted for the parliament that's in place. Only 33% of the eligible voters turned out to vote for their constitution. And as a fact, the Muslim Brotherhood had nothing to do with the February 2011 uprising that overthrew Mubarak. Same thing holds true in Tunisia, where the first so-called Arab Spring sprung. This is not an Arab Spring. It has nothing to do with pro-democracy movements. It has to do with far too few having much too much and way too many having much too little, and they're tired of working as slaves, getting nothing, and a couple of people at the top ripping off all the dough. Then you go over to, hey, lovely time in Spain, isn't it? Ah, yeah. What's the unemployment rate? A little over 25%. They call it a recession. Adults call it a depression. 50% unemployment among youth. Go to Greece, same replay, but worse. Then you go over to Italy, going down. You go over to Portugal, you go over to Ireland, go to Slovenia, go to Hungary, go to other places around the world. It's either in recession, in depression, or going under. All of this, when you add it up, Greg, class warfare, civil wars, regional wars, equals world wars. We are on the cusp of the first great war of the 21st century. You could hear the sizzling. If you really, really listen closely and look at the facts and pass by the rhetoric that they keep pumping down our throats by the prostitutes who suck up and bow down for their masters in politics and corporations.
The Iran, last thing, and we'll wrap this up. The Iranian naval games, then they see the same thing you see. They're actually for real. They're not doing this for show. They're getting ready for war, the Iranians.
Yes, they are.
Your spotting of that trend?
Yes, they are. And let's get this, really sort of put it into perspective. Yeah, I mean, there's no military on earth that can match the American military. In 2000, I was called down to Virginia Military Institute, VMI. That's the same place where Mitt Romney announced his foreign policy agenda this past election. And I was brought down there. I wrote the book Trends 2000 a few years earlier and was asked to discuss new millennium warfare and what it would look like. People that sat on the panel after my talk was such like General Anthony Zinni, who was the #2 under Schwarzenegger, who just passed away during the first Gulf War. There were generals there and other people from the Pentagon and different branches of the military. And what I was talking about was that, as they all know, generals are always fighting the last war. This coming war, when we're talking about Iran, it's not going to be fought with ships and planes. That'll be part of it, and tanks. It'll be world wars of weapons of mass destruction. I had front-loaded my book, Trends 2000, with the breakup of the former Soviet Union. All of those suitcase-sized nukes that were on the black market, hundreds of them they couldn't find. And now you move fast forward. Biological warfare, dirty bombs. What people are forgetting is that the Iranians are the Persians. They've been around a long time, and they're not going anywhere. This isn't Iraq. This is 70 million strong, very educated. As a matter of fact, and speaking about Iraq, Jimmy Carter, that other wonderful liberal that they love, he's the guy that started the war after the fall of the Shah that put Iraq against Iran. He laid the groundwork for that.
8 years.
He didn't like losing. The Iranians lost over 1 million people in the Iraq-Iran war in the 1980s. They gave up the grand total of not 1 inch of land. If anybody attacks Iran, it's the full-fledged start of World War III. Did you ever hear that Bedouin expression, me against my brother and I against our cousin, my brother, my cousin, and I against our neighbor, my brother, my cousin, my neighbor, and myself against the foreigner? Any foreign country, and Israel is considered a foreign country in those parts, attacks Iran, the entire Middle East will coalesce to fight against the imperialist powers, and the Crusades 2000 that I predicted would occur at the onset of the new millennium, which I predicted in 1993, will be in full gear.
Gerald Celente, the publisher of the Trends Journal. You can catch his latest at trendsjournal.com. Gerald Celente, thank you for giving your appraisal of the coming 2013 year. Thank you for being on usawatchdog.com.
Well, thank you, and we should get back and we'll finish up the rest of the trends that are coming up so that your viewers and listeners could be prepared for what's going to happen and survive and thrive in these terrible times ahead. You don't have to go down with this ship.
I'll take you up on that. We'll do it in January or early February.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you very much for being on USA Watchdog. Thanks.
Thank you.